Welcome to the Everyday Citizens Tactical Podcast, Episode 44, Drones, a Needed Asset or Overrated. My name is Jeremy and I will be your host. Today I'm joined by Dylan Schumacher, the owner of Citadel Defense, who recently joined me at the joint One Shepherd, SNS, and Light Fighter Studies Group FTX in Missouri, where we deployed various drones in support of small unit operations, and today we're going to talk about the pros, cons, and our experiences working with the drones. Please bear with me here in the beginning because Dylan's mic does give out from time to time, but it improves as the episode goes on. So, let's dive in.
Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours. Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Strength in numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours.
Welcome back to the podcast, everybody, and Dylan Schumacher, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Another episode for everyone on drones today, but I think this is going to be a little bit different perspective. Most of the people I've brought on the podcast to talk about drones have been very, very drone niche, either in their jobs or, hobbies per se. Like, they're people that know a lot of the technical aspect about drones, but we're going to kind of have a conversation as people who are not necessarily like super technical into the drone field. One might call it like a normies conversation, so something a little less biased. So, with that being said, if you'd like to, please tell everybody who you are, what you're about, and then even your own business.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, my name is Dylan Schumacher, and I have been part-time running Citadel Defense since 2014. I started it shortly after I got into guns, and I originally, or I should say, in guns seriously, and I originally was teaching permit to carry classes because I was doing that in the state of Minnesota, and I've since left that horrible state. But at the time, it was less awful. And shortly that followed into teaching and taking classes. So I took a lot of classes, which I have my whole resume thing posted on my website. So if you're at all curious if I actually know what I'm talking about, you can always go look there. And taught a lot of classes. Like I said, took a lot of classes. And then as of this last year, I've started to design gear, which I've really enjoyed. I put out 2 books last year, and 3. Two last year, 1 this year, I think, and then I've launched a chest rig, which is our Spectre chest rig, which is kind of our main deal, and then a bunch of other nylon things to follow. So it's been good. I like it. This is my thing. I'm either here doing gun stuff, or I am drinking bourbon, or going on a date with my wife, or lifting some weights. But that's about it. This is my shtick.
Awesome. Yeah, I personally am really a fan of your American Minuteman chest rig. I've not bought one yet, but I like the concept behind it. Brent0331 did a really good review on it, and it just there's something very cool about general application chest rigs, things that you can really just use for about any role. So I like the design and the simplicity behind it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Has it been hard? I mean, I ask a lot of people this that, kind of work with nylon and gear in the industry and whatnot. Have you been affected at all with just the tariffs that have come on and, the different economic and logistical kind of setbacks a lot of companies have faced, or are you still rolling pretty well?
Yeah, fortunately not a lot. So we're 100% US materials, 100% US labor. So any of the tariff and all that stuff, that fortunately doesn't impact me at all. The biggest thing I've just hit is just material shortages because just things come in and out. Like, I don't know if you heard this, but I heard recently that Woodland, one of the main suppliers of Woodland, and I'm semi-embarrassed because I forgot their name right now, even though they're downstream of me, they're where I eventually get my Woodland from, is going to stop making Woodland.
Really?
And I'm like, oh, that's not good. M81 is one of my favorite colors to make stuff in. It's my personal Spectre chest rig that's sitting downstairs in my basement right now is in Woodland. So that's going to suck if you can't get stuff in Woodland anymore. So that's kind of been the biggest hurdle thing that's happened to me is just struggling to get the actual material sometimes. I know right now I'm back ordered on Ranger Green until the end of October,
Mm-hmm.
so that kind of sucks. Because again, super popular color.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, nothing too big with like the um, tariff or things like that. I will say, in general right now, I'm sure you've noticed this, right? But the gun industry is just down this year in general. That's just the nature of the beast. It's very feast or famine, and
Yeah.
it's just everybody that sells gear and stuff is just selling less this year, and that's just the way it is.
Well, and the conversation kind of, and I've had this with other people in the industry. I mean, 2020, 2021, 2022 saw fantastic numbers. So the question really
Yeah,
is like, I mean, at least for the American consumer market, how much more gear and weapons and accessories can you sell to people who bought everything in such a short period of time?
right. Yeah,
I mean, there's of
yeah,
course there's always people to buy more, but not in the numbers that we saw previously, and
yeah,
not necessarily even in a more affordable way. That I mean, things are expensive, but things are expensive to make when we're talking about
yeah,
like quality stuff. I mean, even take your chest rig for what is it? To about 225.
yeah. 230, I think.
Okay,
I'd have
230.
to look at my own website. I think it's 230 now.
Well made
But
chest
I just
rig,
yeah, I
American
rate.
made, but like
Yeah,
you want to pay for American stuff, it's going to be expensive,
yeah,
and
yeah. It's just the way it goes.
it's the way it goes. I remember last year, I think HRT Tactical, who we are a dealer for, was the first one to tell me, but they told us, all of the dealers, that 2025 was going to be hard on Ranger Green, and it has been.
Hmm, that's interesting.
Well, I mean, so
Just
many, so
hard
many
like no one's
made
gonna buy it, or hard like we're not gonna be able to get it.
hard to source
Sure. Okay.
because after the October 7th attacks in Israel, Israel started spending crazy amount of money on American companies for all of these
Yeah,
reservists that they called
and
up
that's
because
the
they
color.
did
Yeah.
not have the supply and logistics in place for them.
Sure.
And then there's a lot of law enforcement that are trying to buy, Ranger Green style gear where multicam is lacking because multicam is such a big, like nation state military for almost all of NATO at this point. Um, it's just it's crazy. The market's crazy. Everybody wants Ranger Green and multicam.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah. It's do you remember the good old days when we were kids and like all the countries had these cool, wacky colors all the time?
It was
Like the
fantastic.
Alpenflage or whatever that is. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a lot of character.
And
And
made
sold it.
it's. I was just talking about this last night with somebody because I was looking for more M81 uniform options for the guys and stuff, and outside of Proper, who really doesn't make good stuff. Rothko,
Mhm.
which makes decent camis, and then you start looking at like either Helicon or Arctis, which is both European countries. There's really not a lot of
Yep.
companies that sell M81 uniforms unless you're buying like old military surplus stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got mine from TrueSpec, but now they discontinued all
Mm-hmm.
of their true uniforms, their TRU uniforms.
Yep.
So that sucked. Again, it's like, well, I don't know.
I don't know. It's a great camouflage pattern.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It's not called God's plaid for no reason, right?
that's right. Well, anyway, the on hopefully less depressing news. Um, moving along to our drone conversation, obviously you've talked about it on your YouTube channel. I've talked about it on Instagram, and it's really been everywhere in kind of our sphere right now. But we just got back from the One Shepherd / SNS and Light Fighter Studies Group FTX. We've talked about it a little bit both on our respective platforms, but I figured we kind of, you know, dive into a little bit for the audience to paint the picture. For those that don't know what it is, One Shepherd does, many classes a year, and at the end of every week of training is a 48-hour FTX. And every 2 years during the fall semester, kind of like as an anniversary thing, One Shepherd brings out SNS, which has kind of been like a brother kind of company to One Shepherd for a while now, and then Light Fighter Studies Group out to do the joint FTX. So you have Blue 4 and Op 4. Dylan and I were on the side of SNS and Light Fighter Studies Group as the Op 4, and then One Shepherd was the Blue 4. And pretty stereotypical, FTX scenario for something you expect like that. We didn't have helicopters and artillery and lots of military trucks and all that. I mean, it was pretty much all boots on the ground, small unit tactics style stuff. But Dylan, if you would like to share a little bit about your perspective and your thoughts on the event.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a great event. I will definitely be back. I would say if you haven't, okay, so there's this quote about democracy. I think it's from Churchill, and it's something to the effect of like, democracy is a terrible system of government to be ruled under, except compared to all the other ones. And that's kind of how I feel about Miles Gear. Like, all right, Miles has got some issues. It's kind of whatever, but you know what? It's still like the best training, and what I get. Combat simulation training that you can get all in, where it lets you do all the stuff and take those shots at 200-300 yards and work on your small unit tactics. And there are some problems. I'm not, a Miles junkie by any means, but it is the best all-in combat simulation practice. So if you got some friends and you can bring them out to an event like that, and you guys can work together and you can implement the things you've been working on, I think it's great. I'm excited to go back in 2 years. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, I'll bring more boys this time, and I think it's a good deal. I would also like to say, Jeremy, that I don't know if I'm supposed to say this in public, but we thrashed the daylights out of those guys, and that was quite a bit of fun.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a sense of perspective as depending on which side you're on, but I would definitely say we definitely outpaced and definitely outmaneuvered the one Shepherd side, especially as a smaller force. And there's a lot of contributing factors that go to that. One of the biggest ones I would say is probably our leadership core compared to the Blue 4, the one Shepherd side leadership core. You have Tyler Jackson as platoon leader, very experienced guy. Then you had Sergeant Major Brent Downing as a squad leader, Brent 0331, the myth, the legend himself. And then myself running the other squad. I mean, that's a pretty stacked up core group of leaders compared to one Shepherd who has student leaders. Because even their leaders are going through a class. So definitely a bit of an experience gap between the two, even with the numbers. But we got after it. We were busy for 48 hours. That's for certain.
We were busy, all right. That was fun. It was a good time.
To paint the picture a little bit more for everybody as to what the objectives of this event were. Within the scenario, Blue 4 was one side, supposed to be a larger force, and this was kind of a classic border dispute style scenario. And Blue 4 was supposed to kind of operate near this demilitarized zone, set up ambushes, do security patrols, stuff like that, basically be a little bit more of a force presence. And then our side, Op 4, was kind of a little bit more, ragtag, a little less organized in a sense, or at least they were supposed to be. And really more kind of like a, more direct reconnaissance unit, trying to identify infiltration routes, doing probing attacks, stuff like that. And Op 4 was the smaller force. It was about 15 on 26, 26 being on the one Shepherd side. So we had two squads. Dylan's squad with Brent was 8 guys. My squad was 7. And then we had a 3-man fire team as a kind of platoon headquarters team. I don't know how you feel about the smaller squads because the Army and the Marine Corps, obviously fight about it. Army preferring the smaller squads, Marine Corps liking the bigger squads. I personally prefer a minimum 9-man squad, but I really much so prefer the 13-man squad. I don't know what your thoughts on the matter are as far as force structure.
My magic number is 16. That's my number. Well, honestly, I mean, I've thought about it because then you get 3 full fire teams. Mm-hmm. Then you get a command element that can either be a full fire team or you could have like your platoon leader or your squad leader, and his buddy. Maybe it's the radio man, maybe it's the medic, whatever. And then you could have a 2-man team of like your specialty team, like that could be your MG team or your sniper team or whatever. So that's my magic number. I made a whole video at that one time, but that's my made up arbitrary magic number.
I'm a big 14-man guy. I like 3 fire teams of 4, a squad leader, and then a designated systems operator, similar to how the Marine Corps employed, where he's responsible for small unit tech, radios, stuff like that.
Yep.
I like a flexible weapons squad. So obviously in a platoon, normally you've got 3 squads, 2 rifle squads, and then a weapons squad whose fire teams are detachable from that squad and maybe attachable to a squad, or a platoon leader can independently task them. I like that. I like flexibility in the larger force structure. I just think it allows squads to get so much more stuff done than these smaller 7-8 man rinky-dink army squads.
Yeah, yeah, I concur. The Marines most of the time do it better. Now, look, I've never been in the military. I'm speaking strictly from a Minuteman perspective. I will tell you, of the different military manuals I've read, they always know what they're talking about. Always have a much more succinct, to the point, helpful information than the boring, horrible Army manuals on the same topic.
Yeah. For those that didn't hear him, you kind of cut out a little bit. His
sorry.
first part of the conversation was about the Marine Corps manual. He likes the Marine Corps manual better.
That's much better.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for the Minutemen specifically, the Marine Corps approach to things is a little bit more applicable, just based on the strong emphasis of the NCO Corps and the small unit leaders within the Marine Corps, and kind of the what would be the word? Not reliability, availability, adaptability. That the Marine Corps kind of pushes more so than the Army. The Army always thinks big picture, big units, like we're doing company-wide operations, but the Marine Corps gets a lot smaller and thinks more platoon-style operations, if not all the way down to the individual rifle squad. And this kind of goes into part of what Light Fighter Studies Group was out there, studying, and I won't dive into it too much because I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to talk about it, but they were out there, kind of exploring force structure for implementing drones into, line units, infantry units. And their big question was, are drones, and what type of drones are best applicable at what levels, being the company level, platoon level, and the squad level. So the Army right now puts a lot of focus on drone capabilities, both ISR and strike, at the company level. The Marine Corps does it more so at the platoon level, specifically kind of with like a weapons team in a sense that's kind of detached from the actual rifle squads or weapons squads, and they're kind of being tasked and requested in a sense by the squads themselves, or being directed by a platoon leader. And that's kind of where the premises of this conversation comes from today, and what me and Dylan are going to talk about is, are drones useful to the small unit? What do we like about them? What do we don't like about them? So on and so forth. So, Dylan, if you want, I'll give you the floor and kind of, give me a summary of your thoughts of the drones we utilized during the FTX and kind of what you thought about it.
Yeah. So here's what I'll try to do. I'll lay out my argument here. There we go. Sorry, I keep watching my little thing that says voice connected, and sometimes it bottoms out, like right now.
Do you have a voice setting on your headphone that like shuts off when you stop talking?
Probably. Let me see here.
Because I can hear you, like your background residual noise go away when you stop talking. So I wonder if there's like an auto feature.
There we go. Let's see if that gets better. All right, my apologies. So I'll try to give you an overview of what I think my main points are that are in the negatives, and then I do have a few positives, I think, for the drone thing.
Okay.
But negatives, I don't think they did very good at detecting. I don't think they did very good at the killing, the getting the bad guys. Okay. So here's my overall rough experience of what I have with drones. Now, to be fair, sample size of one 48-hour FTX. Mm-hmm. I'm pulling this together from that FTX and then surmising some other data we've watched from the Ukraine thing, because that's, drones are hot, right? That's where the whole thing comes from.
Sure.
So my first experience with drones, my fire team pushed up to this creek and didn't encounter any bad guys. We were going to maybe encounter them on the way. We didn't. We got to the creek, and then we're staring across this field, 75, maybe 100-yard field, okay? Mm-hmm. And, Brent gets on the radio with me and he says, hey, just hold there. We're going to send the drone up. I'm like, great, cool. So drone goes up. It's up there for, 10, 20 minutes, something like that. Mm-hmm. And radio comes back, hey, You're all clear. You're good to go. And I'm like, all right. And so one of my buddies says, hey, Dylan, do you want me to scan that tree line with thermal? And I said, nope, we're going across the field. And my other buddy says, I don't know a bit about this. And I said, nope, we're going across the field. That's what we're doing. I'm thinking, drone said we're all good, right? So we all see where this is going. But we walk out into the field and we promptly all get massacred, right? And that was my very first engagement, very first experience with drones. And we all just died. Probably like 5 to 8 people lit us up. And I thought, well, that was interesting. And I thought, okay, now you could say, hey, Dylan, you're a moron. You shouldn't have done that. You should have, done this other better tactical thing. You should listen to your friends, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, I've repented. But was underwhelmed with that. Then I think throughout the engagement, we were in a pretty deep creek bed. We were in like a 4 to 5 foot creek bed where my squad was. And I don't think I ever walked through your guys' squad place, but my squad, we were pretty in a deep creek bed. We put some overhead cover on, and the feedback I got from Tyler at one point, and I think it came out during our AAR, was that our squad, at least, was never detected by drones. And there was one night when I was on watch, and there was a drone out, and it was right above us. It was, how loud those things are. And I was sitting under a tree. I didn't have my nods down yet because I was supposed to be taking over watch, so I was just kind of stumbling in there. And again, never detected us, as far as I know, as far as was communicated to me. And then the last thing, we got to the end of this FTX, and we're right before our last big firefight there. And my team is sitting in this ambush position, and there's drones flying overhead, and so we're ducking under trees. And it dropped a bomb on and killed one of our guys. And I thought, well, I guess I'm going to have to eat it, because I've been underwhelmed so far. I didn't like the drones. And I'm like, well, all right. It did get one of us, so I guess there's that. Well, it turned out, I found out shortly after, that was a friendly drone that we had called in to our own position. And it had ID'd one of our guys wrongly with thermal, I guess, and then killed our own guy. And I just thought, yep, this basically sums up how useful I think the drones are. They can't detect anything, and the only people they kill is me. So, that's kind of where I'm coming in at. And I'll be curious to hear your thoughts or your experience, because I think you had a much different experience than I did.
Sure. So, yeah. So, big 3 things I guess we have to discuss is your first encounter with the drone, where they gave you guys some oversight as you did your first field crossing. The second one was detecting or not detecting, our battle positions or kind of our miniature patrol bases, and then the friendly fire incident. Those are the big 3 talking points we got so far. So I knew and this is going to be kind of hard from, I guess, your perspective, because obviously I had a lot more insight to the bigger picture being a squad leader, and I have comms in my ear 24/7.
Yeah.
So I knew that would add some discrepancy. So for the first thing you were talking about with the drone and you guys crossing the field, so second squad, which was myself, deployed our DJI Mini in support of you guys during your first movement. The platoon and the company headquarters drone were not in action yet. Okay. And the reason and most of this is going to come down to communication errors, which is something Doc Larson talked about, if you remember, at the end during the AR. He said, drones do not make the fight. The people implementing the drones and coordinating the drones make the fight. So it's a big thing to remember with this. So my directions at the beginning was to send up the DJI Mini, because I was the drone operator for my squad as well, just having the most experience with it. I was told to clear all major open areas of terrain of enemy movement. So the DJI Mini has no thermal capabilities. So even if it wasn't the middle of the day, we wouldn't have been able to clear the tree line anyway.
Yeah, there's no way.
We were told, hey, do some flybys over the fields and these light brush areas, see if you find any enemy patrols and whatnot. So as far as doing detailed looking and whatnot, that was not our instructions. And that's not to say that, anything wrong with you guys by any means, and maybe even your squad leader didn't know that was my instructions. He sees the drone overhead, and if he does not understand the drone to the fullest extent, which drone is up there, because understanding which of the drones have which capabilities, because I knew that at the squad level, platoon level, headquarters level, what each drone was capable of. My drone, for what we were tasked to do, was an adequate drone. But what somebody else might have perceived the drone to be doing, it would not have been the correct task. Especially that early in the fight, and this was something I talked about with my squad. Open area movements, until contact is made and better understandings of the battle space is understood, is not a good idea. That's why we should use so much more covered terrain movement, utilizing terrain features, wooded areas, and whatnot. Because not necessarily because we don't, we can't see things with the drones, but we don't have an accurate representation yet of the battle space and the enemy positions. That's why by about 12 hours into the FTX, everybody on Blue or on Op4 knew we could walk up and down the east side of that map, in the open with no shirts on it, we would be fine because we had an understanding of the battle space. But that early on, kind of a risky move to do. And, maybe to Brent's perspective, he's like, hey, the drone went up and platoon leader said drone said stuff was good. So in his mind, he's like, we're good to walk across here. But squad leader might not have known that was not, a thermal ISR drone. It was a standard, kind of analog only clear picture drone. Not even checking the tree line, just checking fields for roving patrols. So that kind of sets you guys up for failure just based on the communication error of the people implementing the drone, not necessarily the drones themselves.
Well, I wish Brent was here so I could just trash him and make fun of him now and tell him this is all his fault.
I will say, at the beginning of the event, I think Brent, and I don't want to speak too much for him, I don't think Brent understood the drones a lot, obviously just because the drones are very new compared to his 20-plus years of experience in this kind of stuff. Because even on the radio, in the very beginning, he requested the drone almost zero. But by the end, he was on the radio and he kind of wanted to work with the drone more and use it to their advantage. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit. But so for your first example, that's a communication error on the human's part, not necessarily the drones, in my opinion.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you have any follow-up thoughts on that before we go to the next one?
No, I mean, I think that's helpful. I think that is the story I had heard that came back to me was that the tree line had been cleared. They saw it with some thermal and they thought there might be some turkeys there or something like that. Like that was the story that came back to me. Now,
that is the craziest.
Right? Like, I don't know what, you know what I mean?
That's
but
a game of telephone.
That was the perspective I was under, was that they looked, they said there was nothing there. They said we were good. And so we went. So I just think that's funny to hear it from your perspective, like, hey, I was flying that drone, Dylan, and I'm telling you, this is what I did because that's what I was told to do, So that's, that's super interesting. I think that's enlightening. And I could see too how, because I was a team lead, one, I didn't have the radio. Two, a lot of it comes down to leadership in any fight, right? And depending on what Brent's disposition was, or how often he decided to communicate, or how often he, because he's our link to platoon headquarters, to you guys, to the roadrunners, to the TOC.
Sure.
He, depending on how much he leverages those resources or not, will determine my benefit and experience with those resources.
Absolutely, 100%.
So, I could totally see how, and not to throw Brent under the bus here, but how there is just a Brent issue or a squad leader issue, no matter who it is, Brent or someone else, that just colored it bad for me. So again, that I was looking at it, I was your side of things.
So then the second one was detecting or not detecting the patrol bases. So according to the Blue 4 drone operator, they had found a cluster of people that they had perceived as a patrol base on the western side of the creek. So you had you guys on the furthest western side. Tyler's headquarters team was pretty centered in the map. And then we were in the far east below, almost to directly below Daphne's field. And he could only see you guys at night. And I only got to walk through your guys' setup a few times. He did not find Tyler's team, and he did not find us. But all three people had completely different patrol-based setups. And what I mean by that is I saw you guys had a lot of kind of multi-cam tarps. Not all tarps are created equal. Some tarps can be really good as anti-thermal mitigation. Some cannot. And I'm not familiar with whatever material the multicam tarps were, But I know specifically just from seeing other people test them online and then us doing them ourselves as well, the Marine Corps Marpat tarps, which is what I standardize for my guys, just based on the thickness and the material makeup, is very good at thermal mitigation. But it's also site selection as well. A lot of you guys were kind of set up in the creek until the rain had happened and pushed some of you guys out. But even after that, some guys were kind of still down in the creek bed. And what I mean by that is you guys were significantly below defilade. That is the coolest part of the creek. And for everybody else that's kind of listening, the fall foliage hadn't taken over, too heavily yet. We still had quite a bit of green on the trees. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But the creek area, even by us, wasn't super thick foliage-wise. But I think something your guys' patrol base might have lacked in the thermal mitigation was, one, you guys bedded down, or at least some of you guys bedded down, in the base of the creek, which that base of that creek is going to be the coolest part of that tree line. So you guys will stick out even more so, even with the tarp mitigation, just because your body heat is so much different than the bottom of that dried up creek bed, especially after the rain. So my squad, all the way on the eastern side, we stayed out of the creek and we got up in the honeysuckle and dug out kind of individual positions with tarps overhead, probably anywhere from 2.5 to 3 feet. So we were under multiple canopies in that area being dug up underneath honeysuckle within the more mature trees over top of us. And we were lifted a little bit out of that defilade, but just enough to still give us cover. So we weren't in the coolest part of the creek. So we had multiple canopies. We had the tarps up, obviously, because of the rain. And then we offset ourselves from the coolest points of the terrain. And then Tyler and them were a little bit different. They probably had the thickest overhead canopy where they were at. And they didn't have as much of a low ground as the rest of us. So I think they were able to stay a little bit warmer, even when it got to nighttime. And even our drone operator, will tell everybody, even at nighttime, thermal's still very hard. It's not like you're going to go up into the sky and look several hundred meters in front of you on this camera and go, oh, look, there they are. You have to do a lot of drive-bys, or I guess I should say flybys, of different areas and really try to nitpick something out. And then that one little detail becomes your smaller, kind of more defined search area. And it either works out or it doesn't. But doing general flybys with drones for ISR, and I'd agree with you, it's a little underwhelming compared to what you would think. Unless we're talking like real good military grade fixed wing ISR drones, it's hard. It's pretty easy from like these quadcopters and whatnot to hide from the thermal with just a little bit of proper mitigation. I went on a bit of a rant, so I'll let you kind of speak on that for a second.
No, again, this is super because I'm even on Brent's picture.
One sec, Dylan. If you can hear me, I can't hear you.
Oh no, can you hear me now?
Yep,
What's
I can
going
hear
on?
you. It was like it's kind of happened
right.
throughout the podcast. It's like a little bit of like an internet skip.
All right. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. It's super interesting because even when Brent had posted a picture of our PB on his Instagram, and Tyler had commented on it and said they never found you. And I thought, well, again, it's super interesting, right? Mm-hmm. So to hear you say, well, no, like that, they clear. And I remember the conversation, the AR that you're talking about. It was not clear to me that they were talking about us at that point. Mm-hmm. But again, the conflicting messages, and I totally understand what you're saying about, well, you're down in the creek. That's where, heat rises, cold sinks. So obviously you're going to light up there more on thermal because the ground is much cooler than you are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Again, makes sense to me. Like I don't take issue with that. I just, I had different information.
Oh yeah.
And so again, getting me to think, well, they never found us. Mm-hmm. They got me killed. Oh, WTF are we doing here?
No, for sure. And that's kind of the downside of, and that's kind of the downside of us, our force not being able to do a more formal after action together, like kind of like how the One Shepherd guys got to, because we don't get to clear up all of these, discrepancies of information. The only reason I know specifically that, it was your squad that was found by their drone, and obviously, I mean, this, the listeners don't, even though they found your patrol base, unless they're coordinating with higher powers of mortars and artilleries, their forces were so tied up that your patrol base was never in any danger anyway. But obviously, the real battlefield mortars and artillery, is an issue. The only reason I knew it was you is just because they said they found a unit near the western border in the creek, and we were all in a line. So it's not like it's not like it could have been one of the other units. Like, it's pretty definitive who's on the western side of the creek. And again, I'm not dogging anybody. Everything is a learning lesson, and if you've never got to train and work with these higher capabilities, it's it's hard to do. I think the rain definitely helped their drone operator out a lot. I will also say that our drone operator played within the rules of the FAA a lot more so than their drone operator, because per FAA rules, unless your drone meets very, very specific regulations, you are not supposed to fly 30 minutes after dark or more than 30 minutes before sunrise. But I'm glad he broke the rules, essentially on that, because that's a real training environment. In real life, nobody's going to apply to the FAA rules. But that was definitely one thing that their drone operator had over ours was not doing 2 a.m. flybys.
Yeah.
Because I think literally right after that rain the first night, I think it was within an hour of the rain stopping, their drone operator was up at like midnight doing flybys over our trees.
Yeah.
And obviously that would have been the coolest point after it just rained on us for 5 or 6 hours, and it was 80 plus degrees during the day, and now it's, low 60s, high 50s.
Yeah. That totally makes sense. Like I said, I think that's super interesting. Mm-hmm. Compared communication breakdown, right? Like what we talked about earlier, compared to the information that I walked in here with, 10 minutes ago or whatever that was.
Sure. And most people don't know this, but thermal is outside of probably a few key points of wintertime, thermal is pretty useless during the day in any type of wooded environments. The canopy and the trees and everything, like there's no way. And one training limitation that, I talk about with my guys for that battle space is that we are very definitively fighting in almost all wooded terrain broken up by the occasional field. It's not like we had, vehicles and guys out near roads, moving between buildings, moving across larger terrain features. Like, it's kind of one of those trainingisms. You're really kind of bogged into one terrain type.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And, so I guess maybe I'd be curious to hear your thoughts now. But sure. I definitely came out of there thinking in an urban environment, drones would even be less effective at finding people because there's substantially more overhead cover. In buildings, tarps between buildings, all that kind of thing. Yeah, theoretically we could fly them through windows, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But again, when it comes to sensing and finding, I don't know.
So there's two sides to that. You could definitely hide from drones a whole lot more. The problem is once you're found because there's no way of walking around across the street, up the sidewalk between buildings without being seen by thermal. So long as you can evade the drones as a whole and they never really hone in on your position, you're doing fantastic. Now,
yeah, okay, that's true, but you could also take a sewer, right? Depending on city size and blah blah
sure.
blah. You could have tarps pre-strung up between buildings that have little crossing bridges. Mm-hmm. I think there's still some other things you could do to mitigate that.
Now, the downside to that premises of the more urban warfare side of it is electronic warfare. Because the direction finding capabilities are so fantastic now. You can even put direction finding equipment on drones. And there's somebody that does a very good YouTube video on this and the strategy in which you can employ drones with signals intelligence equipment. But if they use signals intelligence to direction find you and figure out, what city block you're in, and they narrow in on you, and now they know which street you're on, eventually they can find out what building you're in, even with really good comms discipline, because it just doesn't take that long of keying up that radio to do it if you're facing enemy with that type of capability. So it's crazy what you can get drones to do without using like foot manpower. Instead of a guy driving around in a vehicle with direction finding equipment and constantly finding new azimuths, you now have a drone who can cover that distance in a fraction of the time and now paint all of these azimuths for you, and it goes directly back to some, big mapping board. And now you've just lining up directional azimuths on top of each other until you go, oh, look, there they are.
Yeah, I thought the actual signals intelligence that happened during RFTX was one of the most interesting and enlightening things for me. That is definitely something I thought like, oh, this is cool. Like this has some legs to it.
And we could definitely talk about that too.
Yeah, it definitely makes me think that, if the time ever comes, we're just going back to the Cold War thing where we're not running radios at all. It's not Cold War, but you know what I mean? We're going to DTEC here. Radios are out. Anything that puts out a signal is out. We're just dumping it all, and we're going to go back to like runners or something, or smoke signals, because it's harder to find you that way.
So I'd love to address that right after I address your last one with the friendly fire, because this is the most interesting one. So our drone operator, the OP4 drone operator that was responsible for doing these strikes, had 2 friendly fire incidences, all in the last morning. A mortar got dropped on me, probably about 10 to 15 meters from me, maybe a little closer, when we were doing our morning probe. And then the Brent as well got one dropped on you guys. And you're right. You're absolutely correct. And the drone operator admitted this. You cannot IFF during when you're on thermal. And it's even kind of hard to do when you're not in thermal mode and you're just like in standard analog mode, because you have to be so high off of the ground to not risk your drone if you are over top of enemy forces. And then, is that M81, or are they wearing all Ranger green standing in the middle of, a grass field with occasional pines? You know what I'm saying? It gets very hard.
Easy for those to look the same, man. It really is easy for those to look the same.
So in the incident of my friendly fire, which was right before you guys, our first fire team was probably about 50 yards in front of us. They were probing the perimeter of their patrol base, and we were kind of tailing them to kind of just be a support line for them to fall back after they take that initial contact. And I was on the radio with the company headquarters giving very definitive details. I mean, all the way up to, the grid line, the north-south grid line on, hey, don't conduct any drone strikes west of this grid line, because this is where friendly forces are. And, we were very specific. And one thing I talked about with the headquarters guys afterwards was, unfortunately for this FTX and the crazy amount of work that they were doing, we just didn't have enough people in place to effectively pass along my very definitive details of where to conduct these drone strikes outside to the drone operator who is actually flying and doing all of that. Because it's got to go from the radio operator to the drone operator. And for those that weren't at the exercise, we had a 3-man company headquarters team. One was a radio operator, we had one intel guy, and then one data and networking / drone operator. So a lot is going on. Obviously the radio operator can't leave the radio to go outside and tell the drone operator stuff. And then the intel guy could be doing one of 15 other tasks he was doing in this company level talk. Our headquarters team knocked it out of the park, all considered.
Yeah, they did a great job.
I don't know how they got as much done as they did. But it was a very severe just breakdown in communications just due to a lack of personnel. And then the same thing I would imagine happened with Brent's team, because I was listening to him on the radio, and he was even given pretty clear instructions on where you guys were and what your movements were. I think we conducted probably around 28 drone strikes during that event, if my count is correct.
Let's talk about that for a second. So, sure. 28 drone strikes there at the end, or you're saying all in, all over?
All in.
Yeah,
and
okay. All right.
And that was that drone operator's first time conducting drone strikes.
Sure.
With no formal training.
And I just think that we're out there and we're in this field waiting for these guys to come up, sucker them into an ambush, and this drone keeps flying overhead. And then later I found out it was friendly, and I'm like, why are we flying a drone over here if we're waiting to ambush them? Mm-hmm. Because, well, we'll talk about this, I guess, when we get to the positives, but I do think area denial is one of the best things about the drones. Sure. And if I was, the Blue 4, I'm not going to come out into that field when there's a drone flying overhead, right? And again, but that's a tactics thing. That's not necessarily a drone thing.
Sure.
So, and I can see how the communication breakdowns, as you're describing it, caused a lot of the issues. And that checks out to me. That makes sense. Maybe, Jeremy, maybe drones have a place and maybe they'll be beneficial. I
They
don't know.
do, but it's like Doc Larson said. Any amount of capabilities or technology you have doesn't mean anything if you don't have effective people employing them.
Yeah.
I
Well, it's
think
always
that's
the case, right?
and I think that's a great saying for any type of capability.
Yeah. Well, it's like, after World War II, they said we don't need armies anymore, right? We have nuclear weapons. What do
Hmm.
we need armies for? We're just gonna threaten them with the nukes or drop the nukes and the war's over. We can all go home. We just need the Air Force. That's when the Air Force was created. And then of course since then, right, we've fought more land wars in more places than we ever did before.
Hmm. And now we're right back in
So
trenches in Europe.
that's yeah, no kidding. So I think that I don't know if I believe that like drones would be, and not that you're saying this, I'm just waxing poetical. I don't think that drones would be a game changer. I do think that they're definitely going to be a new facet, right? And when we talk about the positives here in a minute, I think that there are definitely some things that they can do
Hmm.
and do well. But I don't think it's nuclear. I think maybe it's kind of akin to machine guns. Like machine guns changed light
Sure.
infantry tactics forever. Um, Maybe it's something like that, but I would even put it maybe just a notch or two below machine guns in that it's not a new type of threat. It's just a more uh, how do I want to say this? Advanced type of that threat. And I guess we can talk about drones being a good indirect fire weapon because that is something I do think that they do
Hmm.
well. But I'll stop getting ahead of myself here and let you
Oh no,
talk.
you're fine. No, I agree. In the conversations I've had with other people on this podcast in regard to drones, I don't think it's a fantastic answer for us to put too much of our eggs in the basket of, because
Mhm.
logistics is still a very real thing. It's very easy to see Ukraine and Russia right now and watch them throw unlimited FPV and quadcopter drones at each other because they are getting unlimited access to raw resources from the rest of the planet, 90, probably 3% of which is not at war. In the
Yeah.
event that the United States goes to war, it's probably with Russia or China, and the majority of the first world countries are getting involved with it. So, is every country going to be able to just throw hundreds, if not thousands, of drones at problems every day because we have unlimited processor chips, we have unlimited fiber optic cable, we have unlimited so on and so forth? My answer is no. I don't think so. Even more specifically for the Minuteman style groups in the United States, God forbid some sort of a domestic, conflict breaks out. I think we're going to have to be a lot more careful with how we employ our drones because it's not going to be an expendable asset. I think the strike capabilities go away and they really more so become a strict ISR or signals intelligence asset that becomes a lot more guarded because they're not replaceable. You can't just get on Amazon and order 8,000 pounds of 3D plastic printing material and 15,000 blank microchips of whatever sort that they're uploading their own firmware and everything to, and then just making them in a basement and sending them out by the crate. I just don't think that's a reasonable thing to expect in a wider span war or conflict that jeopardizes world logistics.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, comes down
Cutting out on me, Dylan.
it just always comes down to some guy somewhere putting his boots on the ground with a rifle.
Oh,
I mean, that's
100%.
that's really what it all boils down to.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what we're doing, nuclear weapons, drones, whatever.
No, I agree. I do agree. I think I mean, imagine the first Russian soldier who looked up and saw a DJI drone and a grenade in a red solo cup. And he was like,
Yeah.
what's going on here? And then it dropped on his head. Imagine like how mind blown that individual was. That's a crazy
Yeah.
concept. That's how they did the first drone drops in Ukraine. Was they had the droppers on DJI drones and they would pull the pins on grenades and they would put the grenade in a red solo cup attached to a string. So when they dropped it from the drone, the grenade would fall out and the spoon would fly off. So now the grenade was live. So when it finally hit the ground, it would explode.
That's pretty good. That's like a high risk setup.
Yeah, it
You know what I
very
mean?
much is.
You do that wrong when you're launching that drone, and you're gonna pay for it.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sure there was plenty of accidents in their experimentation of this, but that just
Yeah.
I mean, and that was probably I can't say this for sure, but I'm sure that was a discovered method by, one of the territorial militias or something. Somebody who did not have, big resources
Yeah.
allocated to them, and they were just scrapping for capabilities to fight the bigger enemy, and that's what they came up with.
Well, it's like when again you go back to World War One, and the planes are dropping bombs. They're dropping hand grenades and mortar rounds. That's what they're originally doing. It's some guy flying overhead, dropping darts out by hand. I mean that was just, and then it evolved very quickly from there, similar to how it has here, right?
For sure. Did you have any other kind of negatives or misconceptions you want to talk about, or do you want to get into positives?
Misconceptions. Oh man, that's a wild allegation to throw out, Jeremy. Geez.
Well, it sounds like we had some communication error and
Yeah,
breakdown.
I know. I'm teasing. I think that no, I think that's good. I think those are kind of my main negatives. So yeah, I'm gonna move to some positives here.
Okay.
You good? Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think one of the things that the drones did do really well, even from my limited perspective of generally not liking them, was area denial. I think they were very good at area denial. When you talk about patrolling through those open areas, or patrolling is the wrong word, but scanning through the open areas with your drone, I think they were really good at that. Because every time a drone comes out, what do? Well, we all go hide under a tree and get under some cover so they don't see us. And if there's a drone patrolling this area, whatever that area is, again, wide open, not in the woods, you're not going to go there. You're just going to stay out of it. Unless you're just attacking with 6 battalions through there and you just simply don't care. But barring that, you're going to avoid that area. And so I think they're a very good area denial tool. That's my first positive.
Okay.
I don't know if you agree or disagree.
Oh, no, I absolutely agree with that. We had one of my local guys that was on the Blue 4. He was actually there for his 3rd semester in 1 year at One Shepherd. He was finishing up his, all of his courses before he starts the actual leadership side of everything. And he'd even said it that, a lot of the Blue 4 was at times just overly concerned with the drone. If the drone was out, they were like, well, we can't do anything. The drone's out. And it very much limited, their thought process on their freedom of movement, what they could and could not do, because, they probably didn't understand it as much as anybody is. They see all the drone footage from Ukraine and they're like, oh, drones are gods. They're literally gods in the sky. When in reality, that's not necessarily true. So no, I would agree with that very much so.
Yeah, I definitely do not think that they're the all omniscient seeing eye. I'm certainly in that camp.
I think even on the very last day, it finally clicked in my head like, oh, Brent's finally starting to like the drone. I think when you guys did your last movement across that easternmost field, before he crossed the field, he had requested that the drone go back up and just do presence patrols in the general area around the patrol base, and then just keep dropping mortars. Because he specifically wanted to keep anybody from their patrol base to come out and spot you guys crossing the field. So it could be aerial denial, even kind of indirectly.
Yeah.
It could tie up enemy forces while you do things in a different, completely different area.
Yep, I agree. And I think that's just, again, that to me is one of the best uses of the drone is that area denial. And I think that's got some legs. That's got some promise. That's got some really good use to just prevent people, even in their own brain, from moving through there, because who wants to get seen, I think the other thing that I've only seen this on paper, haven't seen this in person. We didn't do this at our FTX. Maybe you did, but we didn't. Is to be able to pin a bad guy with your weapons team, your MG team, whatever, and to give them some suppressive fire, and then immediately send the drone up and in for a quote unquote flanking attack. And, basically you're flanking from the sky, right? You're using a really accurate indirect fire mortar round. And I thought, man, that feels like a pretty solid concept. Like I would like to see that in play more. I know that we are trying to, figure out the kill chain in our FTX and figure out, to sense them and then send the drone over and drop the mortars. And I know we didn't have rules for how that sense people are dead or not or whatever. Excuse me. Excuse me. But I think the idea that you could suppress a bad guy and and then follow up immediately with the drone at the squad level, that could be interesting. I think there's a danger there with getting too preoccupied with the drone.
Sure.
That might be a training issue, but I do think that is an interesting concept.
So we did mess around with that, specifically myself, just because I have the experience, first as a radio operator of the Marine Corps, and then just kind of being in this realm of stuff and constantly just evolving with the times. We were doing that where we would either call in specific coordinates for drone strikes prior to a probing attack by us, or while we were in a probing attack, or we were falling back. I would be less in the gunfight, obviously as a squad leader. I'd pull out my map and I would pass either an 8-digit grid to the radio operator to pass to the drone operator, or I would pass a 6-digit grid if I wasn't able to kind of narrow it down more accurately and we were getting a little danger close. I would give a 6-digit grid, and then I would give a terrain feature based off our satellite imagery maps to kind of give them a little bit more detail as to where we wanted those drones dropped or those mortars dropped. And it worked pretty well, but it kind of goes back to my point earlier when we were talking about force structure. You need a systems operator of some sort, or maybe a definitive position if you're going to be directly working with a drone capability, because a squad leader has entirely too much going on to also be doing that. I just happen to have weapons grade levels of autism in order to multitask like that, but most people do not, and I probably lacked in my squad leader responsibilities a little bit trying to coordinate the drone so much. So you really need kind of that JTAC, that forward observer, just a good radio operator in a sense, to do that coordinating on the field. And specifically on day 2, when we were up there before you guys got there and we were doing just a ton of running around, messing with their patrol base that first thing in the morning. John, our drone operator had to have probably conducted 15 or so drone strikes that morning, maybe more. And a lot of it was from me giving some sort of, direction, coordinates, anything like that. Now, that's very much going to depend on whether you're coordinating with a company level drone or a platoon level drone. And that kind of goes back to Tyler and Light Fighter Studies' question is, if you're talking about a company level drone is going to take a lot more time than this FTX represented to go back and reload munitions and then be able to go back out. But a platoon level drone could be a couple hundred yards behind the line of contact, and flight time is negligible and can just drop munitions as long as you've got them on the ground and as long as batteries don't die. And I think that kind of goes back, and I might be getting ahead of myself. You talked about kind of indirect fire weapons a little bit. The mortars are fantastic for it. On that first day when we finally did the big pincer move on the barn, before we conducted our northern assault, as most people do, 7 on 26, I had called in a loan request and had requested strikes on their positions just as general IDF. I didn't have any general positions. I was like, hey, just go start dropping mortars on that location and just kind of work up that area before we get there. And we could hear them yelling F you and all that at the drone when the mortars would drop because we heard the infamous whistle. And our drone operator was getting pretty accurate with it. He really had it kind of figured out. But I think I got way ahead of myself. I'll be quiet for a second.
First of all, that's funny. I appreciate all their profanity yelling. I don't know what they're. I got a different rant about that I probably can't talk about in public. So I think that see, I never heard a whistle ever. From where I was sitting. Now again, could have been a not just on that strike, just during the entire FTX. We could have been a. Say again?
I said we must have been danger close to this mortars.
I mean, yeah. I just think that there could be a communication structure breakdown thing there of, maybe Brent just came in not liking drones at all. And so as a result, I got a bad taste in my mouth. Sure. So I think that's super, super interesting. And I would totally be curious to run it again. Again, I think the area denial, I think the indirect hack idea, I think those are super cool. I think your idea of the Signet and using it to, put signal detection equipment on it. I thought that was really cool. I thought in the after action report about how our TOC guys, at least I think it was our TOC guys that were doing it, were running the drone all over and then listening to their signals, right? And determining when they were spotting the drone. and then that was able to help us locate them of where they were. I'm like, that's cool. That's a good use of a drone, right?
So the drone did not have any signals intelligence
Yeah,
equipment on it
yeah,
during this FTX. They had signals intelligence equipment set up at the fob, and then I had signals intelligence equipment at the squad level, and that's how we were able to listen to their comms.
yeah,
But
and
like I
that was
said before,
cool.
you could put it on the drone if you wanted to.
Yeah, and I think that was cool. I think that was effective. Maybe what I would say is I think that all the uses for drones are not the ones that we're seeing on TV. And what I mean is, right, we all see the footage coming out of Ukraine and the Russia war, and
Mm-hmm.
it's this nightmare fuel that it's like some lone guy napping behind enemy lines. I never know who these people are. They're always by themselves. They're always out in the open, and
Mm-hmm.
they get exploded one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And that's obviously not great, especially if you're that person.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I think that's probably one of the least valuable things that drones do,
Mm-hmm.
based on my current very limited experience
Mm-hmm.
and just the potential future possibilities of drones. And
Sure.
I think thinking of them more as a uh, what am I trying? Auxiliary asset
Mm-hmm.
would probably be the best category to put them in, rather than
Sure.
being infatuated with them and then realigning your entire mission and tactics and everything else around them.
Mm-hmm.
That's my current position. It's subject to change, but I think that's
Well,
where I'd currently.
and the other thing to keep in mind, with drones and your employment capabilities and everything with them is that they have limitations that are not battlefield specific. Batteries is a good example of this. A company level drone, is going to have a lot more flight time capability compared to a platoon level drone because that company level drone is probably either at a definitive TOC or it's at least stationed with vehicles that has unlimited charging capabilities. Whereas a platoon level drone may not necessarily have that. If you have to backpack a drone in somewhere and you're not near vehicles, you have limited battery capability. So you're not going to be able to provide as much support to the squads as you might think. And a company level drone is servicing 3 platoons, maybe more. And all of those platoons are fighting for that company asset. And then you have the individual squads themselves. So battery life is definitely a very big limitation of drones. And as far
Yeah.
as your thing about kind of whatever waxing the guy that's out in the open or taking a dump or something like that, I think you're not going to see that a lot from direct line of contact engagements, kind of like how you saw for our FTX. That's something that needs to happen behind the line. And this was something I was talking about with our guys in regards to this FTX was, as a reconnaissance unit, our job is not to suicide rush patrol bases when it's 1 to 3 odds. That's just kind of where we ended up having to be at the FTX because Blue 4 never left their patrol base essentially. So there's nothing else to do once we had patrolled the entire map. um,
You
so
have
that
worked into a corner. Yeah.
yeah, so then we just end up having Brent do 8-man suicide runs and then just tying up their patrol base for hours. That's not the job of reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is supposed to find infiltration routes, which we did do during the FTX. Potentially conduct sabotage and different types of secondary strikes on logistical and administrative capabilities that's behind the line of contact. And something like drones could be something really good for that. So instead of me more so conducting some sort of direct assault on a fob or a COC of sorts or anything like that where maybe some vehicles and logistics and everything is stored, I could be a few hundred yards away from that with my reconnaissance squad, send up 2 or 3 FPV drones and conduct strikes on their logistics and never have to put my guy's life at risk, and have that comfortable standoff distance. Now, that's if you're able to hump, and FPV drones don't weigh a lot, but their munitions do. So that's if you're able as a reconnaissance unit to be able to hump that kind of stuff. But I think the thought of them being able to just conduct endless strikes on the line of contact is not always accurate. I would agree with that point.
Yeah. Well, and I think this is tangentially a different thing here, where I think that part of the issue, now again, coming from a manager's perspective here, right? But one of the things that Big Army does is they always give people more stuff to carry, right? When you're in the Marines, How much on average do you think your ruck weighed? What's your guesstimate?
Oh hell, I had the radio stuff too.
Yeah, I
Um,
know.
I mean, my ruck well over 75 pounds without
I
my
mean,
plate carrier and everything else.
yeah, without everything else, right? So you're stepping off easy 100 pounds a kid, and that's insane.
Hmm.
That's insane. And even when you look at the military's own literature, they say that's insane. They know it's not doable, but they do it anyway.
Mm.
And I think especially in our world, where we don't have the infinite logistics, supply chain, whatever, drones could get dropped simply because we're not going to take the weight.
Hmm.
Now, hey, the individual team definition, individual preferences, blah, blah, blah. But my point being that I think our main advantage as Minutemen is not trying to mimic the Army and carry all this stuff,
Hmm.
but is actually to purposefully carry far less things
Hmm.
so that you're not exhausted. You don't need 20 hours of recover time. Like you are a little bit more nimble. Yeah, you don't have as much power. As long, blah blah blah. But this is how guerrilla forces have fought since we left the Garden of Eden.
Hmm.
I just
Well,
think I could see a future where drones is not a thing for us because of that. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I 100% agree with you. And even before drones, the military had a bad habit of thinking we had to hike everything everywhere at once all of the time, instead of
Yep.
kind of staging or doing it in sticks. Something like drones and ammo cans that carry munitions for drones can very much so be a secondary thought where that's moved forward to the unit, by vehicles or guys that are not carrying nearly as much stuff as the frontline units per se, as an afterthought, as a secondary thing. It may not be that initial movement thing you may have outside of designated units having strictly ISR drones who aren't also carrying around munitions and all that kind of stuff. Um, for units that are all the way on the front of the push, whatever push that may be, I think ISR drone capabilities are fantastic, specifically if they have thermal, because there's nobody else in front of you. Like, you are the front.
Yep.
But carrying around 640 millimeter mortars or whatever with you, probably not. Probably not weight that you need to be carrying. Hopefully artillery is in position enough to hope cover you. And that
Yeah.
brings up a point I forgot to say earlier when we started this was, I had Tyler Jackson on a few episodes ago, and we were talking about drones and artillery and the war in Ukraine and everything. And he'll even tell you the statistics right now. Everybody thinks drones are the big boogeyman, and there's something definitely to be aware about. They're not even in the top three casualty producing capabilities in Ukraine right now. Artillery
Yeah.
still is king
Yeah,
in the
I'm
battle.
not surprised to hear that at all.
I think
Yeah, that makes
drones
sense.
fall at around spot number 5 as far as casualty producing capabilities. So I think it's
Yeah.
something where the internet has a misconception on the effectiveness or the frequency, of something.
Yep. Yeah. And I'm always, to be honest with you, I don't really care what Big Army does or Ukraine does or whatever. I don't care what Russia or China does until Russian or Chinese or whoever foreign military boots are in my state, right? Like at that point, I very much care. But up until then, it's just I don't really care about Big Army stuff. I'm mostly concerned with like you and me and my 10, 20, 30, 50 boys, and
Sure.
how are we going to make that capability useful or effective, or how is it going to be a detriment to us in what we would have to do if things get really, really bad? You
Hmm.
know, that's the stuff that I always find super interesting.
For sure. And honestly, the whole concept of conducting drone strikes is not in the wheelhouse for either one of us right now because we don't have the logistics to support
Yeah.
the drone push of doing such a dangerous operation. Um,
Yep.
we've got, I think, three drones in my whole crew, and I've got a bigger crew than most. If those 3 drones
Yep.
go away, like, they're gone. Like, that's it. That's it.
That's it.
Obviously we used it for the exercise because Tyler wanted to do the research, and we were emulating a larger force and so on and so forth. But for us, like, we're not using drones in those capacities.
Yeah.
That's a really good way to lose your drone and it never comes back.
And then someone's out $3,000.
Yeah,
Like I
someone's
think
out.
that
Yeah, someone's got a ridiculous credit card balance for no reason.
I think that is, again, that's where I'm like, where would the future be for us of using those things in a very effective, helpful way? And I think with the signet's a cool idea. I think the area denial thing is a good idea. Like I think those things get really
Let me lay another one on you.
how. Oh my gosh, I'm watching this little bar on my side and it keeps popping red.
Yeah,
Really sorry.
you're in and out, but it's not horrible. Um,
No.
Now I will say, drones, even in the tactical sense, for the Minutemen, are 100% applicable. Everyone, but you have to
Yes.
recognize the
Yeah.
limitations. Now, another big thing where drones are the moneymaker for organized groups is disaster response. Drones
Yeah,
are
that makes total sense.
huge. If you need a reason to do it, and you're like, I don't know if I don't know if this thermal capable drone is really worth it for the tactical sense. There's other stuff we could be spending money on. You're more likely at the end of the day to do almost anything disaster response related than you ever will tactical. At least as a large organized force. And you talk about like post flooding incident, post tornado, anything like that. A thermal drone for wide scale search and rescue efforts could be life saving.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be a very good use for it.
And
That'd
that's
be
the
a very
thing
good
that
use.
that's the thing I don't think enough Minutemen or community defense force style people really think about uh, is the dual applicability of the gear that you're investing in. Obviously, if you're kind of like a little 3 or 4 man crew, or you're like a mutual assistance group, and you don't see yourself getting involved at the larger tactical scale or in the disaster response scale, the conversation's different. Um, but if you are a person that plans to be a larger helping effort for your community or your region, you really got to think like, what can I use on both sides of the house, and what has the highest priority?
Yeah. I agree.
Um, did you have any other positive stuff before you wanted to talk about signal intelligence for drones, or did we about hit
Uh,
drones is pretty
no,
hard?
I think we can move to the signal intelligence stuff. Those I think are my only net positives.
Cool. Would you say that you changed your mind at all about drones, or maybe cleared up some?
I
Uh,
think that maybe I'm still emotionally disgruntled. How about that? But
mhm,
I think that intellectually, you know, hearing from your perspective, which again was super curious to hear, is enlightening because the information that I had was just contrary, just completely contrary,
mhm.
and to know that you're the actual pilot, for example, in the opening or the opening engagement, and you were not tasked to scan the tree line, and I was told thermal at the tree line and it's fine. Uh, Very big difference in
Sure.
communication breakdown.
And another big thing I think everybody should hold is that you should have two opinions on drones. You should have what's applicable to you and what's not applicable to you. And what's not applicable to us really doesn't matter to us. But my thoughts on drones are very different when you ask me, Jeremy, what do you think about force structure design and drone implementation for the Army and the Marine Corps versus Jeremy, what do you think my 25-man community group should do with drones? There's going to be two completely different answers, two completely different mindsets.
Yeah. Have you read Don Schiff's Poor Man's Air Force book?
I have not.
Yeah. I started it. I got halfway through. I thought it was boring. I stopped reading it. But you might enjoy it,
I'll have to
just
look
in
that
the
up.
sense that you're more into the drone deal than I am. I don't know. Emotionally, I don't know. I don't like the drone. But anyway, you should be curious if you read that and what your thoughts would be and how helpful, because I think to your point, there is some valid uses of it, and I can't be a moron and say there aren't. And I think that might help further enumerate those valid uses for you,
Hmm.
for again our use as everyday people, that you would find interesting.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up. I don't do as much reading as I should, which just kind
Sure.
of sounds crazy because like when you have conversations like this with me, you're like, oh, he knows all of this stuff. Like you would think I've read a ton of stuff, but I kind of bits and pieces things and then put it together in my mind. But I don't do as much definitive reading as I should. I have a hard
Mm.
time sitting down and focusing with that because my brain just moves a million miles a minute.
Jeremy, readers are leaders or something. I don't know. You're in the Marine Corps. Like they're
Yeah,
the biggest leaders, ironically. I don't.
just never the way. I guess you could say I do read quite a lot because I guess I do read a lot. I just don't sit down and read formal books. I'm more likely to read like a 10-page report on XYXZ exercise studying XYZX, and like that satisfies me. But that's just
I don't read reports, but that counts.
Anyway, signals intelligence. What you got?
I think that was the probably lightning thing out of that exercise. So one of my guys was in the talk with two of your guys, and that was one of the most interesting things that we pulled out of that was signals intelligence, because we don't really do anything with that. We don't really know anything about that, and I thought that was extremely interesting. Again, from the AAR, when Larson was talking about how our team flew the drone around, found their listening to their comms, heard when they talked about the drone, and then we were able to locate where they were based on when they were talking about the drone and where the drone was at the time. I thought, oh, that's cool. That's a really good idea. I like that a lot.
Sure.
And I think the signals intelligence stuff in general, at one point we got their SOI from an ambush. That was cool. So I think that signals intelligence and being able to use their comms against them, and to some degree or another, is very useful and very fun, and has a lot of applicable uses, again, for you and me and everyday people.
For sure.
So I thought that was super interesting.
Who in your guys' squad captured the SOI? Because that was during your guys' nighttime engagement, correct?
Yep. Well, I took the physical picture of it, and one of my guys pulled it off. One of the guys he murked in the ambush.
Why on earth did it take like 8 hours post-engagement to turn in that SOI card?
Yeah, about that. So that might have been my fault. I was running on like 2 hours of sleep at that point. And I mean, that ambush, just, for the record, I totally fell asleep. I woke up to gunfire, which, by the way, was the coolest thing I've woken up to in a while. But I woke up and my rifle was in my lap and I just started shooting because I'm like, oh, it's time. And anyways, so I had only a couple hours of sleep, and my buddy brought it over, and he's like, hey, take a picture of this. And I pulled out my phone, I took a picture, and then I just kind of forgot about it. And, we got out of there. We got out of there quick. We got back. Then we got into rest cycle, and I thought at one point, oh, yeah, I need to, get that to Brent to pass it up, and just forgot.
So let me kind of paint the picture as to the signal intelligence capabilities for this exercise. Because I think Blue 4 thought we had like an entire truck of signal intelligence equipment, and that's just not the case. So my intel analyst that was there, doing signals intelligence work, he had less than $100 worth of SDR and scanner equipment he bought off of Amazon. He had an open source piece of software that he found online, and that's it. That's how he was able to intercept and record all of their communications, was with that open source software and less than $100 worth of equipment off of Amazon. So signals intelligence is very easy to perform, in a sense, depending on how complicated we want to talk about. If we want to talk about, general line signals intelligence, base level signals intelligence, very easy to perform. I'm not talking about, nation state, NSA, crazy, listen to you 3,000 miles away signals intelligence. Now, it goes back to the same conversation about drones, is it's all about the operators and those implementing the equipment. Because I can give that same SDR setup and software to another completely separate individual, and if they don't have the mindset and the know-how to really maximize that equipment, it's not going to matter. It doesn't matter. Because I don't know how much, my guy or your guy had told you about it, but before the SOI card had gotten turned in, my intel analyst was writing down words based on listening to their comms that he thought were becoming repetitive and were pertinent to conversations. And he would write them up on the whiteboard, track them in binders and whatnot. And he would basically start playing a puzzle game to figuring out what the context is of those, what those words meant based on the context of the conversation and the frequency in which the conversation was being, held. So, for example, for everyone listening, if the enemy gets on the radio and says, whatever, headquarters, this is rifle platoon, we are picking daisies at the Pancake House, and Op 4 comes on the radio, the good guys, and immediately says, hey, first squad's in a gunfight with them at this location. Well, we can probably deduce that, hey, picking daisies means, gunfight or engagement or something like that, and the Pancake House is, code word for their patrol base. So over time, things start to mesh better and better and better and better, based on repetitivity, relevance, so on and so forth, to the words being used. And then, of course, then we got their SOI card, and then, the rest was history.
Yeah. And I thought that was super effective. I thought it was super interesting. I would like more of that. Next time we go back and do this in 2 years, Jeremy, we need to have like a 6-man talk and really flex the capabilities of that more.
Yeah, I told Tyler in my after action, just from the headquarters perspective, the headquarters definitely needs like minimum 5 or 6 guys next time just to really get more out of the cross capabilities, and then even be able to train some guys up that aren't familiar with that stuff, and using it.
Yeah, well, my guy told me you were running 3-hour shifts in there, 2 on, 1 off at a time, and at night you were still running 2 on, 1 off, 3-hour shifts.
So we were originally.
Is that accurate?
I don't know, but it sounds accurate. A 3-man talk that has to run 24/7. Again, I don't know how they did it. I know both of my guys had less than probably 7 or 8 hours of sleep between the 48 hours.
Yeah.
And I doubt they got much like actual rest when they were not asleep from just exhaustion. We were under the perception originally that there was going to be a fair handful of people to work in this talk. Well, then we got on deck, or it was right before the day of, and we figured out, all right, there's only going to be 5 of them. 2 of my guys, your guy, and then the 2 guys from the high mobility team that were running the vehicles. Those 2, They were going to do vehicle stuff during the day, and then they were going to do radio watch at night to help give the TOC guys some relief. Well, then that didn't happen because the high mobility guys were kind of staying out in the field in the rear a little bit up near that cache point, and there really only ended up being 1 guy. So the planning and logistics from that left a lot to be desired, because running a TOC and for those that have never done it, planning for a command and control element is just as involved, if not way more so, than any type of infantry or rifleman style unit, because there's just so many moving parts. So it would not surprise me if they did 2 on, 1 off, and I applaud those guys because they killed it. I have no idea how they were able to operate drones, signals intelligence equipment, TAC servers, 24-hour radio watch, and write a propaganda message for the enemy. All at the same time.
You hear that, by the way? I got to listen to the audio of that. It was fun.
Yeah, I was the one that sent it out to everybody.
Oh, were you? Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, that's funny.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
That was hilarious. The fact that they are just so sleep deprived in the talk, and they're like, all right, this is what we're going to do next.
Right? Yeah, I think that next time we go, that would be probably the most interesting thing to me to flex and grow and work on, is having a substantial, robust talk. Like, I even think, this got brought up later, but the Roadrunners, like, we didn't really take advantage of that. Like, one of the things my guy said to me later was, he's like, it would have been cool if we would have got some hot coffee to you guys out to you right after the thunderstorm, and help wake you up, help boost morale, whatever. And I thought, that's a really good idea. And that never even entered my brain. Like,
you guys might not have used them. We did.
Yeah, again, maybe it's a Brent problem. Maybe I should blame Brent. But I think that's something that should have been flexed a lot more, of getting those resources brought out to us in a way that would be useful.
So we used it a lot for transportation. So on that very first day, when we did our infiltration all the way to the northeastern corner, and cleared that eastern half of the AO, and they came on the radio, our TOC, and was like, hey, we got pretty bad thunderstorms rolling in sometime, within about the next hour and a half, 2 hours. I got on the radio and was like, hey, can I request that the high mobility unit comes and picks our guys up off the northern road? Because that was part of the op briefing, was that we cannot utilize the high mobility unit on the northern road unless we have successfully plotted out and executed an infiltration route to that road and cleared it of, enemy spottings or anything like that. So we had done that. We had access to the northern road, and I was like, hey, in order to save my guys both time and, effort, energy getting back, can the high mobility unit pick us up and bring us back to the rear so we can start setting up for our storms? Because, we didn't have anything set up because we had been out for several hours in before the storms had come. And then we did the same thing the next day when we were, after they had moved their patrol base, right before dark. We had our second fire team out there that you guys relieved. They took the high mobility unit from that northern road all the way back to the rear to get back to the patrol base.
We requested the high mobility unit on the second night when we got lost and ended up in the exact opposite corner of the AO than our PB, and we were denied. So
where were you guys trying to get picked up from?
I don't remember. It was like the exact literal opposite corner from where we were. So that was off the northern road.
If it was
by the northern road.
If it was after dark, that might have been why. I don't know how comfortable that guy felt on the back roads.
Got no benefit from the no benefit from the drones, no benefit from the mobility unit. I just, I was just a dumb grunt running around thinking everyone else is incompetent, basically, is the picture I'm getting here.
He's not saying it to you, Brent.
Well, Brent did get us lost. He was pretty mad about that. I don't blame him. He got us out of some thick woods there. So
he should be able to close his eyes and walk around that place as much as he's been there.
Yeah. I think he was pretty mad with himself that we got lost.
And the high mobility unit was originally supposed to have more people as well. There was originally supposed to be the original kind of Jeep build, but I think that first one broke down, and that other one they brought, I think that was a backup. And then there was supposed to be a deuce and a half, and a deuce and a half did not show up either. So it was one of those things where we were supposed to have more capabilities that did not come to fruition. That's not the fault of Tyler or anybody else. They did try to plan for it, but that's kind of just one of the downsides of these style of events that are damn near just volunteer events, outside paying for the expense of your equipment and your ammo.
Well, yeah. I'm just saying I walked everywhere, so I don't know. I deserve the suffering badge or something, Jeremy. That's. I just want you to know of my suffering. That's really all I'm trying to say here.
We don't have badges, but we have hats.
Oh, let's go. Okay, I'll take a hat. Let's go.
They're thermal proof, so the drones can't see you. We kind of got off topic there. Did you have any other questions about the signal intelligence stuff, or anything you wanted to talk about?
No, I don't think I have any other questions. I thought it was all cool. Like I said, I'm very much looking forward to going back in 2 years. I'm assuming you guys will be there. We'll have to coordinate a little bit tighter next time now that we've had a couple chats here, and man, I think it's gonna be good. Again, it's maybe the worst form of training except compared to all the others. So for all of you who haven't been to a Miles event, I would highly recommend you go, and I would particularly recommend that you go with as many of your friends as you can, because I think that's what maximizes the value.
For sure.
It's not just necessarily the experience, although that's good and helpful, but being able to have that experience with your boys, I think is the best time, the best use of it.
For sure. We use a lot of sims here with my crew. We're working on some stuff right now to actually get some Miles gear. I'm not sure what I prefer between Simunition and Miles gear. Miles gear is nice because the engagements you can do further engagements. Blanks are cheaper, and you don't have to wear, more full face PPE the entire time. However, with Miles gear, a small amount of shrubbery, blocks your shots at shorter engagements. Guys do not understand suppressive fire as much. The amount of times that you'd see Blue 4, and I'm sure Op 4 is equally as bad about it. The amount of times you see just guys just like jolly trotting around in the open during engagements, just kind of hopping towards the line of contact, and you hear guns just ripping. It's like, I don't think everybody would be as comfortable standing up like this
Yeah.
if they were actual projectiles, which I know from our past events, sims will make you keep your head down a whole lot more and make you choose your times of movement, your maneuverability with a little bit more care and precision.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah,
sims are expensive. You got to wear face PPE the entire time. If it rains or snows or does something like that, that sucks. And you have limited engagement distance. They're pretty accurate to about 50 to 60 yards. They're semi-accurate past that, but you're really not getting more than maybe 100 to 115 yards before you're really just, lobbing shit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's nothing that's gonna be perfect, right? And that's why we all just know that it's training. You gotta think of it that way, and you gotta do the best you can with what you got.
Oh, one other point on signals intelligence I want to drive home is the importance of encrypted communications, everybody. It is so easy to listen to analog radios. Like it's less than $100 and then you just do it. There's no excuse in 2025 not to have encrypted comms.
Yeah, that is definitely something that's wonderful.
You still got to know how to use the comms effectively. Again, there's still the whole, operator error that falls into that. But it's a lot nicer to use encrypted comms than it is analog stuff. Because once your SOI card's blown, it's blown. But, you lose a radio, you can fill new keys and everybody's still good, But SOI card, like once it's gone, you got to print new SOI cards to distribute them to everybody, and then they're still going to listen to you.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be curious to see where that goes. Have you read? Well, I'm assuming not. But the Guerrilla Guide to the Baofeng Radio by NC Scout.
I have not read that. I will talk to you offline about that.
Okay. I'm curious to hear your thoughts now.
Yeah.
Well, never mind then. Won't go down that tangent. But all that to say, I think the encrypted comms are definitely a win. We are definitely going to look to invest in some comms, hopefully, from Everyday Citizens Tactical. We're going to scoop some of these Motorola ones here in the semi-near future. And I think that's going to be effective. Because I just want my radios to work. Is that so much to ask?
For sure. I will tell you this, whether it's for me or not, investing into kind of more trusted American surplus radios like Kenwoods and Motorola's and stuff like that is a lot safer than where I see a lot of people going right now with like Hyteras and stuff like that and going the Chinese DMR route. A lot of people get into them because they're cheaper, they're maybe a little more user friendly, but they are security nightmares. I mean, like there's some significant security risks to using these Chinese radios, just with the amount of back doors that go into them, the sabotage capability, the amount of lawsuits Hytera's locked up in right now from stealing data or specs or information from companies like Motorola. Do not buy DMR radios, guys. I know there's companies that make a living selling DMR radios. I'm sorry I'm saying it to everybody, but unless you want to get Mossaded like Hezbollah on their pagers, or other things, stop buying radios directly from China.
Great public service announcement.
Yeah, I'm done on the rant. Well, Dylan, I'm glad you came on, man. I think we had a very productive conversation.
And thank you for educating me about all of my misconceptions about. Again, I just like to say for the record, it's all so you can't blame me.
Sure. Are you gonna? I know obviously it hasn't been released yet to the public, but you recorded your initial drone video. Are you gonna make a follow up to that based on this conversation?
I guess I'm gonna have to. Yeah, I was thinking about that while I'm sitting here. I mean, I gave the before, and I guess I'm gonna have to give an after now. So maybe I'll film a second part to add it in. I'm not sure what I'm doing with that. Maybe I'll refilm it. I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet.
Sure. So
but we're gonna have to see.
It's Thursday evening for us right now. This podcast will come out on Monday, so you still have time to post that and then record. Sometime next week if you wanted to do two separate, or you could. I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's your channel.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'll try to remember that. You know?
Well, Dylan,
Right.
you got anything else for the people?
Nope, I don't think so. Train with your boys. You might need them someday.
Train with the boys. That's for certain. All right, Dylan. Well, lastly, again, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks again, man. Really appreciate it.
All right, everyone. That's all I've got for episode 44. Drones, a needed asset or overrated? As always, guys, train hard, train often.
Tell me turn it down and I'ma only turn up louder. Call me what you wanna, but you can't call me no coward. Straight the numbers, we the people, still the ones with power. Fighting fire with fire, time to take back what is ours. Tell me turn it down